Hi, this is Greg Ruby for Acoustic Guitar Magazine. Today we're going to continue our study of chord-melody style playing. In this lesson we're going to address two techniques. The first, what to do when there is a chromatic melody, and the second is how to play four-to-the-bar style accompaniment while playing chord melody. All right, let's jump in. So, what is a chromatic melody? A chromatic melody is where you have two notes and you play every note in between those two notes. So for example, in example 1, we go from the note E chromatically up to the note G. Now E is the third of the C chord and G is the fifth of the C chord. So in example 2, we're going to harmonize this. We're going to play a C chord right in that position. And we are going to use our additional fingers to play that melody while holding the chord. We also might come across a situation where we need to play diatonic notes, that is, notes of a scale while holding a chord. In example 3, we have a C chord, and we are playing the notes D, C, A, and G, descending. So it would sound like this. In other situations, we're going to just need to hold a chord while playing one additional note. In example 4, we have a D minor 9, the E note being the melody note, and we're going to need to go to the note D. So we're going to release just the pinky and move the first finger over to get that note of D. In example 5, we have a D9 chord with the E as the melody note. We're going to strike the entire chord on beat 1 and then apply four-to-the-bar accompaniment on beats 2, 3, and 4 by releasing the pinky on the second string and strumming the lower 3 strings. And you'll find throughout the example later of My Melancholy Baby how this technique can be used throughout. In example 6, we are using 2 inversions of the G7 to harmonize the melody that goes from A, C, B, A. So if you notice, my pinky, my fourth finger, is going to be the lead through those first 3 notes, and then while holding the G7 chord, we'll just release the pinky and play an upstroke on those. So, example 6. There are other situations where after strumming the chord, we're going to need to let go of the chord completely and let the melody carry the rhythm. In example 7, we have a C6-9 chord on beat 1, and on beat 2 we release it to reach up to the note C with our 4th finger on the 5th fret of the 3rd string, and then going to the note B at the 4th fret and then back to the note C. Feel free to use either fingering of, or we could use our 3rd and 2nd. In example 8, My Melancholy Baby, there are a number of great technical challenges that we can look at here. In measure 1, we have the chromatic melody with the C chord beneath it. In measure 2, we have a C chord again, but we're starting on the 9, calling that a C add 9 chord. Right, and this time we're going down to the note F sharp, which is chromatically leading us to the next measure of A7 sharp 5, with that F natural as the melody note. Now, this is our first spot of where we have that 4 to the bar accompaniment. So again, remember to release the pinky when going to the strumming part on the beats 2, 3, and 4. The same thing in measure 4. A little trickier to get that ring finger out of the way. In measure 5 is very similar to example 4, where we release our pinky and go to our first finger at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And then we're going down chromatically, a lower neighbor of that note, and then back into the note D. So, and here we're gonna, with our first finger at the 3rd fret, we're gonna come up and play the chord D minor 7 with our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers, a slightly easier reach with that from that first finger. And we're gonna strum the chord. The F is the melody note there, and then we're gonna strum the bottom part of it. So once again, 4 to the bar style accompaniment on beat 1 and 2. Then our melody note is the note B. So we're going to play an A9 chord and then release that note and strum the other remaining 3 notes of that chord. So in that measure, and then coming back to a full D minor 7 chord with the A note as the melody, 5th fret on the 1st string. And then again, releasing that ring finger. And then over to the A7 for the accompaniment, and then back to the D minor 7. The other thing to keep in mind throughout this is when we're going to what we could consider the accompaniment chords, is try to play a little softer, right? Bring the melody note out, bring it to the top, and then bring the accompaniment notes down below. So, in measure 9 and 10, we have the melody D, E, F, G, A, C, B, A, all while a G7 chord is going on. So we're going to harmonize that in several ways, using inversions, as we've covered in prior lessons. So we're going to start with just a 3-note inversion of G7 at the 3rd fret with our first finger on strings 2, 3, and 4, and barring across there in our 2nd finger on the 3rd string, 4th fret. For this first part, we're going to let our 4th finger guide our way up to the next G7. So we have G7 with the D as the melody, pinky coming down, pinky is guiding the other fingers up. While we're moving that pinky up, fingers 1 and 2 are sliding in. So they're going fingers 1 and 2 in a way as they go up 1 fret, they're switching strings. It's always useful to look for the small movements that your fingers are doing throughout these. And in this case, just finger 1 and 2 is switching strings while moving up 1 fret. So then we're going to release the chord, get that G note on its own with the first finger, and then that's going to bring us into the G9, we're calling it. So G7 with the A note is the melody. And again, our 4th finger is going to be the guide here. It's going to reach up to the 8th fret and then come down to the 7th fret for this G7, with the B as the melody note, and then we're going to release that and get the note A. So all of that together, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that leads us right into the D9, where we are going to strum the chord on beat 1, getting that E as the melody note, and then on beats 2, 3, and 4, we're going to do our 4 to bar accompaniment. The same thing on the next measure. Then we're going to a C6-9, and like example 7, we are going to strum that chord, getting the D note as the melody, reaching up with our 4th finger or our 3rd finger to 3rd finger to 4th. So either or. And from there, we are immediately going to go to a D7. And 2 of our melody notes, the D and the C, are already in that D7. So our pinky gets the note E there, and then we have G7, G7. You may recall from earlier lessons we would sometimes add passing chords. This could be here in measure 16 could be a great place to add that passing chord. So for measure 15, and then it repeats. Okay. For the coda, the last 8 bars, we're going to go to our F chord. We're going to release it to get that note A flat or G sharp before coming back to the F major. So then we're going to release that chord and play this B natural note with our 3rd finger. And we're going to use our 3rd finger because when we reach up to that F sharp diminished chord with the melody note of C, we're going to finger it a little differently than we've fingered this chord before. It's going to be our 1st finger is barring across the 7th fret, and then we're going to have our 2nd finger and then our 3rd finger going across. On beat 2, a little strum, and then that finger is releasing, and we're getting the melody note of B. So that's the motion, a very common diminished dominant 7 sound. So back to measure 18. And then moving down 3 frets to the F sharp diminished as the inversion. And then we're going to a C6. And we're getting the neighbor note below the melody note of G, back to the C6, then the melody note right above the G. So that will go. So we have A7 with 4 to the bar accompaniment on beats 2, 3, and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to our D7, making our full bar. Using our rest stroke, it's landing on string 1, really bringing out the melody note on the 2nd string, that melody note of F. Before we add our 4th finger to the note G, then we're going to need to briefly release the chord, but kind of keep its shape in your fingers, even though they're not pressing the strings, because we're going to need it again in a second. Our 4th finger goes up 1 fret to the G sharp, and then we're back to that D minor 7, but this time we have that A note on top. So that measure sounds like. Then that brings us to our G13, And again, we're going to use the rest stroke. This time we're going to strum through, our pick landing on the first string on beat 1, and then releasing through that string on beat 2. So let's do that again. Then we're going to go back to the G13, and then with an upstroke, we're going to release the third finger so that the note D at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string can come through, and then conclude it with the C6. Another approach to this song is to play it rubato, giving more space, playing it free of time. When doing so, you don't have to keep the 4 to the bar accompaniment, but you're still able to use the same chords to create the sense of the passing of harmony. For example, and with that, I conclude the Chord-Melody Made Easy series. Thank you so much for watching and reading. This is Greg Ruby for Acoustic Guitar Magazine.